1954, when the South Eastern Automobile Club was formed. It consisted of about 20 members originally, and the first major trial attracted 54 entries. The sport began in a variety of formats designed to test driver and navigation skills of competitors. Reliability trials, motorcarners, safety tours, economy runs, autocross, trials, rallycross and rallies are some of the different types of events which have been run since the inception of the club. 150 to 200 mile courses were not unusual for trials and economy runs, most of which were staged during the day. The majority of cars entered in local competitions were stock standard road cars that were driven to and from the events. The kids were strapped into the back seat and a picnic lunch was thrown in for the day. Maps, the speedo and lots of paper were the only other items required. Navigation was concentrated on for trials, as well as a variety of obstacles and challenges which needed to be completed during the event. Some of the challenges the competitors were confronted with included wheel changes, reaction tricks and average maintained speed sections, which required crews to travel to a set position on their map in a specified time. All-night trials to Calder and the Grampians, then back, were common, as well as economy runs that produced an impressive 42 miles per gallon in 1956. The South East Automobile Club was one of the first country clubs to be affiliated with the Confederation of Australian Motorsport and continued to host around Australia Red-X and Ampol trials through the South East area. Today, the highest profile of the driver-navigator competitions are rallies. These consist of a course that is mapped and set out with instructions by the organisers. Roads are closed off to general traffic and speed limits are lifted. Rallies concentrate more on speed and driver skill rather than navigation. Equipment within the cars has evolved to include full all-over protection, harnesses, helmets, electronic measurement devices, underbody protection, fire extinguishers, suspension modifications and in some classes, enhancement of the vehicle's performance. The result is some of the fastest and most exciting driving over an array of road conditions, producing some superb motoring action. The South Eastern Automobile Club was host of the 1992 City of Mount Gambier Rally, which was the first high-profile rally to be run for many years in the South East area. The event attracted thousands of onlookers and many big-name crews, all of who were impressed with the running of the rally, and this would help catapult the next round to a higher status. The 1993 City of Mount Gambier Rally was held on the 19th of June and involved a large field of 45 crews, which consisted of some of the top contenders from South Australia and Victoria. Following the success of last year's Special Stage Championship Rally, this year's event had progressed to Australian Championship level, and it was to be the 9th round of the Australian Rally Championship. It also included the 9th round of the 1993 Daihatsu Challenge Series, as well as being the 2nd round of the South Australian Rally Championship. The field was made up from varying types and models of vehicles which range from the high-tech, late-model four-wheel drives and turbo-equipped vehicles to the seasoned earlier model sedans. Many of the crews, although unable to compete for outright places, were going all out to take their respective class points. 6 crews from the local South Eastern Automobile Club, who were competing in the rally and using their knowledge of the local roads and conditions, were hoping to do well. This year's course, although using the same general area as 1992, has had a number of the competitive special stages changed to ensure there is no familiarity with the course for last year's entrants. Surfaces encountered would vary from bitumen through to sand, white metal and dirt, and speeds of around 180 kilometres per hour were expected from some of the competitors. Spectators were invited to inspect the vehicles on display at the Civic Centre from 9 a.m, and then to enjoy several vantage points along the special stages. Car away was the 1990 Galant VR4 of Graham Alexander and David Stewart. This was the crew's first time competing in Mount Gambier, and they were hoping to take out a high placing for the round.
The roads will be pretty slippery and wet. Car 1 will find all the slippery fetzes first, no doubt, but I'm looking forward to it. It's the same for everybody.
The team would go on to complete the day with a clean sweep of the placings, in the process producing the fastest times for 11 of the 12 stages throughout the day. Up familiar car from the 1992 round is the Galant VR4 of David McDonough and Ian Mawson. Securing a second outright position in last year's rally with navigator Rod Winfield, David and Ian were wanting to continue with a strong placing in this round.
This year I think will be totally different, not having driven on these conditions down here. It's certainly going to be quite treacherous, and hopefully we'll take it easy for the beginning and see where we are at the break.
The Mitsubishi kept up with the pace for most of the day until stage 8, where they lost about 30 seconds after hitting a fence. Another competitor returning with the same car but a different navigator was Andrew Lovell in his 1990 Mazda GTX. A 6th outright and first in class with Jeff Nins in 1992 was good reason to expect a high placing with Brian Otleb in this event.
We'll plod along and hopefully we finish with a reasonable result. You know, somewhere in the first few would be nice, but you know, we've got to get to the finish first.
Even after hitting a fence in stage 6, they managed to keep the Mazda right on the pace, including the fastest time for special stage 12. The first of the two-wheel drives away was the 6-cylinder Falcon of Andrew Murdoch and Alison Reeves. Although normally in events such as this, the more powerful cars would have an advantage, it was evident from early in the day that the wet conditions would slow the Falcon and a finish in the higher placings was unlikely. The second Falcon off the line was the XR8 of Steve Winwood and Jeremy Brown. They too were having trouble contending with the wet conditions on the day. This extended to trouble with the surrounding vegetation for Jeremy as he discovered a small ditch in the grass. Peter Evans and Rob Beekman were putting in consistently fast times throughout the day in their Pulsar GTI. They managed to complete the course without incident to take out the honours for their class, as well as achieving an exceptional outright placing. Competing in a later model car than in 1992, Neil Guillen and David Rudham in a later TX3 were clocking very consistent times all day. This would enable them to collect a placing similar to that of their last journey to Mount Gambier. This year was certainly a better one for the crew of Mark Rogers and David Haddon. Having retired from the previous Mount Gambier rally in their Mazda RX-2, the transition this year to a Subaru RX has certainly paid off.
All we've got to do is keep it on the road and we'll be happy, more than happy.
Pushing hard all day certainly provided spectators with some exciting viewing, especially within the pine breaks. Jeremy Lake and Scott Atkinson were planning on continuing with their good results from 1992 in their Mazda RX-2. The wet conditions had some say in their performance this time, and they had to be content with a lower placing for this year. Car 10, a 1984 Corolla GT crewed by Greg Plumridge and Roger Virgo, was in Mount Gambier for the first time competing for points. Throughout the day, they were able to keep their times very consistent and didn't drop any placings going into the night stages. The little Suzuki of Tim Sullivan and Tony Borg was going great guns for the early part of the day and looked like taking out a just placing.
47 seconds down on our grade, and we try to pull that in tonight, but it's a four-wheel drive laser which we're trying to catch, so it's going to be a bit hard.
If not for losing time in stage 10, the team might have ended with a higher point score. Pushing hard all day in their Commodore were Chris Lowe and James Pollock.
In the first section we went off 3 times, so that says something about going off.
The car was looking like more than a handful in the slippery conditions, but it was a blind motor that eventually put a stop to their run in stage 12. After just being rebuilt from a rollover, the Honda Civic of Denise Collins and Josephine Cuss continue with its bad luck run by breaking a drive shaft in Special Stage 1. This signalled the end of this year's effort, but hopefully they'll be back next time. Another early retirement from this year was that of Eric Dowling and Craig Orr's Laser TX3. They also failed to complete Stage 1 due to a blown motor. After competing in a Datsun 1200 last year, Robert Cobelt was looking at advancing his position this time around with Ross Armand at the wheel of his Laser TX3. The team looked capable of a good placing in their class again this year, but they dropped several placings towards the end of the day. One of the earlier model cars competing was that of James Gloucester and Craig Beard. The 1978 model Escort was tipped to do well on the day and wasn't going to disappoint the crew, returning home in the top 10. One person who was very impressed with the high-speed event in 1992 was Swampy Marsh, who was forced to retire with a blown motor in his V8 Commodore. This time he completed all of the stages with the motor fully intact. Together with navigator Brenton Clough, they kept the spectators guessing as to just who was the number one car. Ian Ross and Evan Vidler were still having trouble coming to terms with the slippery conditions that Mount Gambier had to offer. Driving in the same Centura as in 1992, the team had just completed some repairs to the front of their vehicle, so they were able to compete again this time. It's a well-known mathematical fact that if you enter a 90-degree corner at 45 degrees, then the outcome isn't going to be something with straight sides. David Hall and Glenn Potts are also flat out keeping their 1600 pointing in the right direction. They were looking at bettering their 13th outright position from last year and were on track to do just that. The Cortina of Jamie Adams and Jamie McIntosh must have a jinx on it for Mount Gambier rallies. Having to retire last year with mechanical trouble, this year it was hoped to at least complete the event. But a broken differential proved it wasn't to be, and they were forced to retire in Stage 10. Russell Jones and Doug Morrison were back in their Lancer to try and secure another top 10 placing. Their luck was to run out in Stage 10 when they were forced to retire from the rally. First of the local crews away were Kevin Lynch and Ralph Frost in their Mazda RX-3. After collecting a 7th outright last year, they were hoping to use their local knowledge of the roads to carry on with a good finish, but Stage 10 saw a broken axle put them out of contention for this year. The Daihatsu of Bob Wyatt and Terry Race was also competing for points in the Daihatsu Challenge. The car was experiencing lots of understeer in the wet, which is characteristic of the front-wheel drive vehicles. But this was not their undoing, however, because in the last stage of the day, a constant velocity joint failed and they too were forced to retire. Gary Kirk and John Caldecott were running in the same Pulsar GTIs last year and managed to achieve a very similar placing for this year's round. Local knowledge in a four-wheel drive vehicle should put Peter Jennings and Andrew Kriesel in a position to repeat last year's performance.
Oh, we've done quite a few events here, and it takes a bit of a keen eye, I think, to read the road conditions going over them so fast.
The Subaru completed the course, but was later to be excluded from the placings. The V8 Commodore certainly produced some speed on the day, and the family team of Brenton and Simon Fiedler were no exception to the rule. And Alan Tracy in their Datsun 1600. They improved their times throughout the day and went on to secure a good outright position. The Gemini of Darren Nelson and Darren Stacey returned with a new paint job. Last year saw the car exit through a fence to lose some time for the crew, but everything was incident-free this time around and the team managed to finish the day about midfield. Colin and Ross Shepherd in a Mazda 626 were working their way through the field early in the day. Stage 4 was to be the crew's downfall, with the engine blowing a Welsh plug and then collecting some trees just for good measure. This combination was a guarantee that it was curtains for this year. Husband and wife team Russell and Lynette Marker returned this year after securing a 24th outright last event. This time around, they picked up one placing in the same Kermit Green Gemini. The 1986 sprinter of Jamie Sargent and Richard Gay was close on the heels of the Gemini. They completed the rally very highly placed in their class and ended midfield overall. Conditions throughout the day didn't seem to be improving, and some competitors tried to improve their visibility by switching on their lights. This wasn't going to be the main problem for the Corolla crew of Dan Prentice and Mandy Rudham, though. In Stage 7, they encountered steering problems and had to retire. Jamie Robertson competed in a Bluebird in last year's round with navigator Dave Adams. In a Datsun 180B this time, he managed to finish the day 3 outright places better, with John Thorpe providing the navigation. A smoking motor would have seemed to be the main concern for Jeff Phillips and Stephen Miller in their Datsun 180B. It was, however, a rollover in Stage 2 that signalled their premature departure from the event. Entry 35 was a family affair, with David and Paul Dewing providing the crew for the 1986 Subaru. Improving throughout the day, they were just unable to secure a top 3 placing for their grade. Back this year in a recently built Daihatsu, the team of Patrick and Mark Tiernan were out to better the efforts of the previous visit to Mount Gambier in a 1600. Their effort would be well rewarded with a good placing for their class. The wet conditions made the task of bettering their last assault on the rally no easier at all, but the crew of Phil Fraser and Peter Becker were hoping to improve this time. Unfortunately for them, the Celica suffered a gearbox problem in Stage 8, forcing them to retire. Also in the Celica, Brian Cobb had teamed up with David Maloney, who had competed in the previous Mount Gambier rally. It was obvious that they would be pushing the car to the limit all day in a bid to improve their position. Picking up 9 positions during the day were Simon and Frank Catling in their 1973 Escort. The result for them at the completion of the event was a placing in their class, which allowed for the smaller engine capacity of the car. Mirage hatches are not often seen on the road, let alone on a rally course. The sometimes rocky surfaces didn't deter the crew of Gil Slade and Brett Armstrong as they charged through the field. The stanza of Peter Dodd and Adam Branford managed to complete 8 of the 12 stages before retiring. Until that point, they were able to gain 6 places for the day. Yet another family crew, Luke and Neil Dimmick in their 180B Triple S, were going all out to complete the day as close to the front of the field as possible. This would pay off at the end of the day as they moved up 18 positions. Maury and Margaret Machado were also pushing their way through the field, moving ahead of the Triple S crew after they had misread a corner. The little Corolla ended with a good class placing, which its local crew were more than happy with. The third of the rotary-powered cars in the field was crewed by the Ballarat team of John Eastick and Craig Rogers. The Mazda RX-2 buzzed its way through the day without any problems to finish midfield. Brandon Elliott and Damien Mosey in a Datsun 1600 had a good run in the wet conditions, which was also continuing to dull the light. They completed the course but were to be excluded at the end of the day. Final positions for the 1993 City of Mount Gambier Rally were as such, with the Mitsubishi Galant VR4 of Graham Alexander and David Stewart first. Andrew Lovell and Brian Otlep in a Mazda 323 GTX came home 2 minutes and 7 seconds later with second place, and third outright with a crew of David McDonough and Ian Lawson in a Mitsubishi VR4. Apart from weather conditions on the day, the event was again very successful and managed to attract a large field from South Australia and interstate. Organisers are hoping that the next City of Mount Gambier Rally will be bigger and better again and draw an even larger following than previously.